All right, and on that note, let's get going. So, welcome again to the Northland Education Business Alliance Virtual Career Expo. My name is Brett Kisker, and I'm actually the Executive Director of the Northland CAPS program up here in Clay and Platte counties. I'm also a member of NEBA. NEBA is a network of education and business organizations in Clay and Platte counties, and our vision is to promote and provide business-driven educational opportunities for you, because you, the audience here, you're our next generation of business leaders, and we hope that one day you're actually the guest speakers that on these future events. I'm going to be your host during this session, but we do have two other NEBA members working in the background. The first is Adam Jelinek. Adam comes from LMB Magna, and he's actually the business chair of the NEBA organization. He serves as the HR programs coordinator at LMB Magna. We also have Julie Lewis, who works for Clay County EDC, which is the Economic Development Council, and she helps to make businesses grow in Clay County. And so those people are helping out, and of course, assisting with this and doing very important work. Just a few quick notes before we introduce our guest speaker for this session, our guest speakers for this session. This session will run about 40 minutes long. We have a hard stop at 12:40 because we have another session right afterward. And our industry experts here, Anita and Jamey, are going to begin by sharing their professional history and some insight into what their day's like and what their career's like. But we want this to feel more like a conversation. So at the bottom of your screen, if you look down at the bottom, there's a Q&A button. And we encourage you to use that space to post any questions you might have at any point in this session. We might not be able to get to them all. We've actually run out of time in all of our sessions so far today. But whenever we get done with this, we hope that we've hit some of the big topics so you understand what career opportunities wait for you right here in Kansas City. You do not have to move away to have an awesome career in an engineering related or manufacturing related field. At the end of the session, you'll take a very short survey. It takes you about a minute to get through to help us improve on events like this in the future. And the last but not least, this session will be recorded. So if you do want to hear some of these things in the future, you can go find it on our YouTube channel. All right, so with that in mind, let's get started. I'd like to go ahead and introduce to you Anita Noller and Jamey Quelle. And Jamey, I hope, you know what? I don't know if I said your name right there, your last name. But
just Quelle.
Just Quelle. There we go. That's embarrassing on my part because I've talked to you, I don't know, a million times. But if you want to start off, Jamey, go ahead and tell us about yourself and your professional history and kind of what you do with Missouri Enterprise.
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me on. I am thrilled to present to the future generation, and Missouri Enterprise is definitely interested in the upcoming generation and how we can help manufacturing. So Missouri Enterprise is part of a national network of a subdivision of the Department of Commerce is our funding source. And our whole mission is to drive manufacturing in each of the 50 states. How do we do that? Well, we join chambers and EDCs, and we network with a lot of the businesses within that state, but we help them with grants, we help them with employment issues. We are a second set of eyes in every plant, safety, training, all of those things. So everybody's got a unique instance or a problem that they need to have solved, and we are that solution. So part of the national network, I can check 50 other what's called an MEP center to help solve that problem if I can't do that. Or I'm a connector for a lot of other places. So we're a nonprofit, and our whole goal is to drive impact. So they could pay for a service through us, or we could refer them to a service. Either way, I'm trying to help them with one of four things. Can I help you create jobs, save jobs, increase profits, or increase your efficiencies? So it's a great concept for organization. It took me a long path to get here, which I can talk about a little bit later. But in a nutshell, that's what Missouri Enterprise is. Briefly, my background is a little scattered, especially in education. So I went to the University of Northern Iowa on a track scholarship, and I started off as a business major. I failed economics because it was boring me. So I switched out of business degree and got a psychology degree. And everybody said, what are you going to do with that? Well, you use psychology in every aspect of your life. 12 years later, I went back and got my master's in international business because I was working for GE at the time. A lot of project management, safety coordinator. I was kind of in and out of safety roles for a while, became a facilities manager, and then was hired in by GE as an industrial filtration sales rep. So I did that for about 9 years. And then Missouri Enterprise is an accumulation of all of my experience, education and work experience. So I would say that I got lucky, but really I eventually learned in my life to keep looking for what I wanted to do. And here I am.
Sorry, Anita, why don't you take over?
Great. Well, yes, welcome to all. And I will admit that Missouri is home and Kansas City is home to me now. It has been for about 17 years, but I actually grew up in Illinois, a small town in Illinois. So growing up there, definitely liked math and science and didn't like blood, which basically a teacher said, hey, why don't you think about engineering? And up until that point, wasn't necessarily on my radar, and definitely being a female at that point definitely has grown and continues to be, but definitely kind of sparked my interest. Had the opportunity to go to an engineering camp still in high school, and believe it or not, as exciting as an engineering camp sound, it was great just to give me the exposure to so much that's out there, whether it's on the technical skill, manufacturing, as Jamie talked about, all the way to biomedical, aerospace. I mean, there is such a wide variety. So it led me to Bradley University, which is where I got my Bachelor of Science in Industrial Engineering. And I started off as undecided. So I went to the camp, got exposure, still wasn't sure, had the opportunity to get a little bit deeper dive, which I think is really critical to everyone to really understand and get exposure, the most exposure you can get. And there is such a variety here in Kansas City. So had that opportunity. So finished industrial engineering degree. During that time, I had the opportunity to do an internship with Hallmark, with UPS, and a project with John Deere, and landed back with Hallmark, which led me to Kansas City pretty quickly. So I started off in a very frontline type of role, process engineering, looking at how do new products get laid out, how much time does it take, quoting those jobs, very hands-on in that aspect. Moved to a frontline distribution manager, and then always had my eyes on Kansas City at that point with our corporate headquarters, and have been there since in a variety of different roles, inventory, as a supply chain manager, which is where I'm back at, supported our transportation and order management services and some system support as well. So that's really, you may be thinking industrial engineering, if you've not heard about that before, or if that's newer to you, it's really, we have the sign on, it's kind of a tag of saying engineers make things, IEs make things better. And it's really just, of course, we're a little biased in that element, but it's really just about looking at the process and how do you improve it and how do you get that. So if you like to look at things, if you drive by places and wonder, and that is my biggest thing, is I drive by, I'm like, what are they making there? How do they do it? What does it look like? I want to get inside that building and learn about how does Amazon get packages everywhere to your door as quickly? All those type of things. How do they solve those problems? That's where I think engineers really resonate, and that's what I really enjoy. And I think I'm a part of an organization, the chapter here in Kansas City, that really kind of opens that door and opportunities here. I'll say it's my husband that really got me here. He's at Northland Career Center, so NCC, so truly support technical education and whatever that path is. But I think if you like to solve problems and then get out there and take a look, and that's really what led me to my career. And I've been with Hallmark for 20 years now. It's hard to believe it goes quickly. And I was trying to think through, like, I think I've been in definitely 9 different roles during that time. So, I've been very fortunate to be with one career that may not be the pathway that you take, but to have that flexibility in a variety of different roles. So thank you for allowing me to be here today.
That's a great start to this. Picking up some feedback, and I don't know where. So the question that I want to start off with, because I don't see anybody using the Q&A button, hit the button at the bottom, okay, and start asking some questions here. What do you want to know about? What do you want to learn about from an engineering standpoint, or jobs in engineering or manufacturing related things? So Jamie, I'm going to start with you here. Are there even any jobs in manufacturing here in Kansas City? Like, is that a thing? Like, what does that look like? Tell us about the job market.
Well, we went from one of the best job markets of 3% to 30% overnight. So the biggest thing that I hear now from manufacturers is we can't find enough people to fill our positions. That was 9 months ago, and that's today. the big hang up has been that, one, we pushed manufacturing jobs away from our country for a whole generation, the millennial generation, right? So a lot of those jobs went overseas. They're coming back with a fury. We have learned in our country that we need to be self-sustaining a little bit better, right? There's still some things, shoes and clothes are still going to be made overseas. We can't afford American made clothes, but American production is the best in the world. And it always has been. And, you know, there's a lot of companies out there that are just struggling for those different types of manufacturing positions. And, you know, the old adage or the traditional thought was that manufacturing jobs are dirty, they're unsafe, they're not clean, they don't pay very well. None of that is true. And we are much more effective and efficient through the help of engineers and different organizations like ours to solve those problems. I mentioned before, you know, if you're a welder and in certain areas, you could make 200 grand a year, and there aren't enough welders in the world to fill the positions in this country. That's just one example. Machinists, you know, industrial engineers, there are so many positions open. Yes, within Kansas City, St. Joe, in rural areas, wherever you want to live is great. So by the way, I live in Kansas and I work for this organization in Missouri because manufacturing is so prevalent in Missouri. And I get to have a greater impact in this state than I would in a lot of other states.
All right, so let's turn it over. We got some questions finally starting to come in. Thank you. And as you're listening to these things and a thought pops up, like the best thing you can do is ask a question. Okay, this is what makes it impactful, so we could tailor this talk to you. So Adam, if you'd like to take over with the Q&A from the crowd, and we'll start rolling through these.
Sure. So one of the questions that we have is, what does an engineer's day look like? And do you spend all day on the computer, or do you get to go out and be hands-on, etc.?
I'll take that, Jamie, if you don't mind, and going forward on that. So I think it really depends. You can do, I think, you think about pre-COVID, there's a lot of us that maybe before that now is on the computer for our safety and for everyone else's safety as we can. It's great to have that flexibility, but it really does vary. And throughout my career, I've had both. I've been in very hands-on positions. I will tell you, that's where my heart is. Getting to know and work with the people on the floor and making it happen and seeing it firsthand is great. But I will tell you as well that that's probably where I spent the least amount of my time of my career. You know, you kind of get that grounding. I've had the opportunity to do that. So I interact with people. A lot of times I'm in meetings, now it's virtually, but a lot of times then it's been more strategic. And you kind of need that throughout your career to help build you and help you understand. It's very important to understand before you start forecasting and determining how much you think is going to happen, to be able to visualize that, see what it looks like, get a feel for it, or have that hands-on in that interaction. So even though I may not see the people as much, that's still very foundational, I think, from that. So it can be a mix. My favorite is a blend of both. And just because I work at a corporate doesn't mean that I still don't get to go out to those facilities and see the automation that Jamie's talking about. And, you know, right now, that's literally, we're like, how can you get me in? How can I go and see that? Because that's really what sparks and it helps get future ideas. So it's really what you want to do. And it can vary quite a bit.
I can follow up on that real quick. It really is what you want to do, right? So if you want to be an engineer and you want to work in an office all day, there's those jobs out there. If you want to be an engineer that travels across the country or across the globe, those jobs are out there. And, you know, the traditional way of thought in that I need a job, so I'll do whatever you tell me, is changing. And I tell manufacturers that with the way that the generation ahead of you, I'll refer to the millennials a lot because we have a lot of work study with them. It's more like, what can the company do for you now, right? So those are the types of thought processes that are changing. So go in with that assumption. Like, there's a lot of jobs that are out there, so be choosy and take your time and select the right company that works for you.
And definitely, I find a lot of people do that throughout their career, depending on when and what works with their home situation as well. That definitely makes a big difference as how people choose that and that flexibility and what roles. And I know it has me personally as well. Great question. Keep them coming.
Yes. I want to address something real quick. So the only question that's kind of out of bounds is how much money do you make? But can I just tell you something? If you go into an engineering or manufacturing related job, you're going to be able to put food on the table. Like that's not going to be an issue. And a quick Google search, if you just search for salary ranges, the quick answer is it depends, because there are 1,000 different types of engineering and manufacturing jobs out there. And it depends on the company you work for and where you're working and what kind of role you have in the company. And what you're talking about is an average salary. So it's not how much you'll make at the beginning, but it's also not what you're going to make at the end of your career. There are opportunities for advancement in all these fields, and they typically come with better pay as you move up through a company. If you're a hard worker and curious and show up and do those kind of things. So I just want to make sure that I answer that. We don't want to discount that because that's an important thing, but listen, you're going to do just fine. So there you go.
And I can address that. So we teach a basics of manufacturing class across the state for people that want to get into manufacturing jobs and maybe haven't, they don't have the background for it. And we tell them at an entry-level position at any of the companies that I'm bringing in to hire you at, you can expect $15 an hour at an entry-level job. And it would take any, recent graduates that are 18 and above to get into some of these jobs because we're pre-qualifying some of those companies too. Now that's not universal, but at an entry-level job for $15 an hour, that talks to what the demand for manufacturing is, because you don't make that at the grocery store or a fast food place, right? Not everybody qualifies, but there's certainly the demand out there. And yeah, it's there's all different kinds of salaries, are really what you want to do, right? What you and the type of work you enjoy. You're right. You're going to put food on the table. And again, demand is out there.
So the next question, this is a question for both you, Anita, and Jamey. What are some of the job requirements for your particular field?
So I will say, if you're coming into it, you typically are going to see the 4-year engineering degree, something like that. That said, it can't stop you from building your way up. I will tell you, I've had the opportunity when I had a team of engineers that I was managing, half of them came the typical degree, college education, half of them came from knowing it. And I would say we would say the one that has the most patents, the most designs, he worked his way through. It's a different path, but his hands-on skills, his knowledge, that piece, great. And you can't, so I think it can really, for me, a team that has both, that comes from the education side and has that hands-on technical skill set, is really the best result. Like that team is one that you would take and say, hey, if I was starting a company, that's who I want to take with me, because hands down, really comes that way. So I think, again, it's what do you want to do? How do you want to go about your path personally? Do you want to start and get in and hands-on and work your way up? I think you're going to see that lens even much more welcomed and get there. Maybe not have the college debt. And the flip side, okay, college is for you. You want to go there and then, go through that path. I think both is very, very possible today. And I honestly, I think even more than when I was 20 years ago looking at this.
So, and this question is also for both of you, and Anita, it kind of touches on one of the things that you just mentioned about teams. So the question in the chat says, do you do a lot of collaborating with your coworkers, or is it mostly on your own?
Every day collaboration, everyday communication. I can't imagine a team of engineers. There are some, and I'm not saying that for the most part. I mean, even you think about computer engineering, they're even doing like tag team now, right? Like I'll design this part, you'll design, like sitting at a computer and doing that. Maybe it's virtually today, but it is a lot of collaboration. You get your best ideas by being collaborative, challenging each other, building what can you get to the best result.
And
I've taken the last couple.
No, you're fine. You're good answers. I can expand on that to say that networking is so critical in anything that you do. If you're going out and looking at a job, I know you can get trapped in getting onto online job searches. That's not where you find what you want, right? Get out, get people to know you, you know them, and that's what leads you into the path that you want. I mean, I can't underestimate. When I first started this job, I would go to networking events 45 hours a week just so that I could make contacts. And as a connector, I match make a lot of different companies with manufacturers or just people that aren't even in manufacturing. So don't underestimate the power of networking yourself.
Agreed. So this is a very interesting question, no pun intended, but what is the most interesting thing you've learned in your field?
Great question. Jamie, you got an answer?
Yeah, I think that the traditional way of doing things is, I ask people a lot. So being a safety first person, and by the way, always think safety first in every aspect that you do, right? Whether it's health or anti-terrorism or just picking up a trip hazard. When I go into a plant, usually I can size up their efficiency by looking at the plant floor. Is it clean? Is it taped off? Do they have safety measures? And when I ask companies, what are your safety processes? They say, I think we're good enough. And then you look around and it's not good enough. Safety is never good enough, and neither is anything. So at GE and Pitney Bowes, the philosophy was you can always get safer. Oh, you've met all the metrics, get better, right? Because accidents can happen at any point. So if you're not continually trying to improve your processes, whatever that is, then you're making them worse if you're not getting better, right? And that's a philosophy that I think a lot of people don't get, right? In the professional world and successful companies. And a lot of companies have great widgets and everybody wants to buy them. But if you're not running the company in the right direction, you're not being efficient and lean, then your company can fall apart in a hurry. So I think the old "it's good enough" comment, or "we've always done things this way," is shocking that that's still a thought process. So I talk about bringing younger people into the workforce too. This generation coming out of the school sees things differently. You see how to not shortcut things, but be more efficient, because you're more technically apt, because you were brought up with computers and cell phones in your hand. My generation does not see those shortcuts, the easier way of doing things. My generation sees things the way we've always done them. So it's interesting to go into a lot of different facilities, whatever they may be, and see that variance. $1 billion company is as safe as it can be. A dying company, the employees are just trying to survive the day. They don't care about safety. They don't care about the company. So I think I guess you could call it shocking or surprising that a lot of companies just don't get it yet.
I would echo that maybe a little bit. And I think a lot of times you think engineers, we say problem solving, but we're also really change agents. And this kind of echoes to what Jamie was saying a little bit about people resist change, and especially different generations, or maybe more of what they've used to, or just by fact that they've been doing that for that many years already. So new eyes coming in, but change can be really hard. And there's that emotional piece of change as well, that it does impact. And, we've talked through jobs and it's not always negative, but there's that trust factor. So bringing that to the table and bringing people along with them, you can have the greatest idea, the greatest, equation, formula, success. But if you can't communicate it and you can't bring people along with your journey, it doesn't matter. And that's what's really critical. So I think as you think about, maybe you're really focused in on education, you've got to have that. That's kind of the first check. But those soft skills too, that you're learning along the way, very, very critical to make it to success. So I would say change for me, I think I was very used, because I was coming in to do change and do that. And even being a Gen Xer, I didn't expect that piece to be so sometimes resistant and so emotional to people. That is definitely taking me back. And there are still days I can take that I'm like, well, yep, people aren't on board yet. Like still gotta get them on board, which is very critical.
And I'll just
critical, right? And I would say I tell every plant the future is here. It was here yesterday. It's not coming. The ways that you need to survive with the job shortages, with COVID, with being more efficient, you have to change your processes. And if you can't do that, if you don't want to do that, again, you're not getting better, you're getting worse. But yeah, your generation gets that, and you have to bring that in. Now, there are some things you can't change everything overnight. That's obviously not a good idea, but be ready to make changes and to adapt to the changing environment because we're here.
So there's two questions in the chat, and I'll just say them both. And this is a question for Anita. But do engineers require a lot of math, and is more science or math involved?
Definitely depends. I say math, yes, but don't get too hung up on that. I mean, again, there's always different paths to get there. But if you're thinking a 4-year degree, then yes, math is pretty substantial in that. But it's really just to learn those problem solving skills. So with that, science as well, it definitely depends on your field of engineering. Again, so I think if those are your hangups, or either way, like, hey, I'm really strong in those, then yes, you might lend to, and that would be a path, maybe your 4-year. If not, then are your hands-on skills and maybe going in and getting hands-on experience, because that's where I talk about that balance could be. But yes, I would be lying to you if I didn't say those math, but I can't say I do calculus today. I've not done calculus in a really long time, but those problem solving skills that I learned by doing all those equations and the thought logic, I think helps me stand out. I have on occasion worked with a team of engineers. Most of the time in my career, I am working with a bunch of different business people. So what do I bring to that team? Maybe a different perspective is that problem solving and that skill set there that I got, however you achieve that.
So this question is for both of you. What are the risks of your particular field?
Could answer that in a lot of different ways. With me personally, if I am not out networking and visiting a lot of manufacturers and asking, what are your headaches? What's keeping you from where you're at today to where you want to get to? Then, as with any job, if you get out of it what you put into it. So if I'm not consistently out there communicating and saying you need to talk to us because at some time we're going to be a resource for you, then I'd be out of a job. Anytime you set foot in a plant that you're unfamiliar with, there may be those safety precautions that company is not fully aware of. Most of the companies I walk into have good safety precautions, and why I emphasize it, but not everyone does. So I can, like I said, usually size up a company, and if I see, things swinging from the ceiling or, no injury report up, I'm not walking through that plant. So, you need to be aware of your surroundings. The other thing is, our whole goal is to drive manufacturing in every state. So there are forces that we can't prevent, COVID, but if you think about it, everybody that's running now is an essential business and they're busier than ever. There are some businesses that have failed. You just need to be adaptable and concentrate on the ones that you can help. But that's a great question. Anita, what do you have?
Agree. Very good question. I'll take a little different point of view, a more personal point of view is I can think of at least 2 times in my career where what I've been proposing would then eliminate my role with the goal of, hey, if I can get this and automate this and move this forward, you don't need me, whether that was creating layouts or times or automating something. And that's a risk you take. But if you're bringing that to the table and that is way, then you have confidence that then you are going to find a spot in that, or that you can then, that's a great career builder as well. But there's definitely a couple of times where either my recommendation going forward is not that I would continue to support this, but I think you've got to bring that trust and transparency and not be protective of your role. I think that would have hurt me a lot more versus being very transparent and saying, because you're going in and you're analyzing something and making a decision on what the company should do going forward and having their best interest at heart and taking your second step. It's worked for me, and I think it can work for a lot of, regardless of where we are now and in the future too. But it's definitely something that does, when you're the change agent, you may not always be the most popular, but once you get those people on board, it's great. And that's your biggest success is seeing that is a lot more. And if you've got somebody who was a naysayer in the beginning, who's now turned to your biggest, advocate, that's a huge win.
Agreed. So Anita, the question in the chat is, and it seems like a number of students have this question, but what can we do as high school students to prepare for our engineering paths?
Great question. I would say get out there and take advantage, like you're doing today, getting exposure to different people, ask friends, family, start to get an idea of what do you think you want to hone in on and different options about your path, whether that's different options, that you can look at, whether different skills, something you can do at CAP, something you can do at NCC, and align that, something that gives you exposure to what those options are and to help figure out your path personally that you want to take to get there. So I think there are multiple paths. And I think just, taking the time, I said I went to an engineering camp. That was, one of those things. But however you get that resource, whether it's taking a class and getting exposure, Project Lead the Way, robotics, any of those things, it's going to get you with those groups and organizations, even just exposure today. Keep doing that so that you get a better feel. Is this the right fit? Get an understanding. Like I said, you can find engineers almost anywhere in those fields. And it's only I think there was a question on salary before. And, you could go out and say, okay, what's the top 10 salaries for somebody graduating, or what those salaries are. Those engineering roles are up there on that list, and you can almost go there. But you need to make sure it's the right fit for you to truly be happy. And that's going to be the most important thing to help. So I'd say get out there, keep looking for things like you're doing today. Talk with classes, talk with that. I always love, we've had a lot of babysitters for my kids that because they were she was interested in being an engineer, wanted to talk or needed something for an engineering class. Great, get out there, make those connections.
So the next question I have, I know we have about 4 minutes left, but it's kind of a theme to a certain extent of some of our previous sessions today. Brett's touched upon it along with, about having passion for what you do. And one of the questions in the chat is, what are some of your favorite parts of your job?
I have an easy answer: solving problems. That's what it is. It's how do you make it work, and doing those things that maybe seem impossible, or some of the projects I've had that were like, oh, I didn't know, we've attempted this multiple times, and then getting that success at the end. So.
Yeah, much the same. Solving problems, that's what we do. So whether that's a one-person startup company that needs funding and I find them a grant that keeps them going or starts their business and creates job, or whether it's a company that's about to fall under because of COVID, and I find them a grant or find them efficient ways of doing things that saves jobs or just keeps their business going, or we learn to drive that business to, drive it in the local arena versus foreign competition, right? That may be keeping them from getting where they need to go. So anything, like I said, anything that I do that saves jobs or increase profits affects lives, right? So there's nothing greater I could do. And manufacturing is the heartbeat of America. So I'm proud to drive manufacturing, in particular in Missouri, but across the country.
So there's one last area that we want to focus on, and I know, Anita, you just touched upon it not too long ago. So I'll ask this question to Jamey. Can you talk about automation and its impact on manufacturing?
Enormous. So Adam, your plant is one of the prototypes of mass automation where there are, droid armies that are doing things more efficiently. But let's not fall under the false assumption that robots replace people. They replace people in dangerous jobs, and there's a synergy there. The proportion is at least 1-to-1. So, the automated age is coming. You still need people to program a robot or a cobot. You need people to quality check and to maintain there's just a different mindset going through there, you know, and some of those jobs are in tough, cold or really hot environments or dangerous environments, and robots are great for those. And when we talk about automation, it's doing things smarter and wiser, right? So some things such as video training, which is a really big concept now. Instead of a trainer holding you by the hand and walking you through the shop, you can video train this job and see if that's really what you want to do from your phone, right? So we shortcut a lot of those processes. We act smarter, not harder, right? And so automation isn't just the invasion of the droid army. It's being lean. You're going to hear that with the Six Sigma concepts. It's being safer, being smarter and more efficient, right? So that's an overall summary of automation. And you need to grasp that concept as you enter the new world, because everybody likes better ways of doing things, right? We have to be, because I mean, like I said, there's a job placement company in Kansas City that has 1,500 positions open right now. That's not just manufacturing, but that's staggering when you normally have 150 to 200. That's where we're at today. That's in Kansas City. So there's jobs out there, and they're not as dangerous as you may think. Every company out there has to play it safe. You have to wear face masks. You have to split shifts. You work smarter, right?
Guys, this is fantastic, but it's 12:40. I can't believe that we're already at the end of this session. We're out of time. So I love the fact that you guys touched on so many things that are important here. Like math and science is involved, and yeah, sometimes it gets difficult, but you know what? That you either work through it and you figure it out, and honestly, you just put time and effort into learning more new difficult material, or you find ways that you can utilize your strengths to go work in these areas that are high needs areas. And 1,500 jobs at one placement company alone here in Kansas City. I mean, the opportunity that's out there is just so vast. And I know we didn't hit on everything for the education and things like that, but I'm sure that these two and your teachers and people at school will help you find that information, your counselors, whoever it is, but go experience and go explore. And I hope in the process you figure out that there's lots of job opportunities waiting for you right here whenever you get done. So if you're not taking that away, students, then we've done something wrong. I'd like to thank Anita and Jamey for coming and joining us, taking time out of their day. Time is money. So this is a big deal that they've given up the time to come talk to us and to share their passion and their insight with us. And it's just great to hear from them. I hope you guys in the audience, I mean, you heard from two professionals out of thousands of opportunities. So I hope you understand that there are lots of other things that exist here in these areas here in Kansas City. And when I click this in button, you're going to have a survey pop up. Please take that for us. It's going to take you like maybe 60 to 120 seconds. It's not going to take you long at all, but it's going to help us get better at hosting meetings like this in the future. And if you want any more information, or if you want to go rewatch this session, you can always go to the NEBA Works website, nebaworkskc.org, or you can go to our YouTube channel. We're going to post these videos soon. In the meantime, just again, thank you to our speakers. You guys were amazing, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Take care all. Thank you.